Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where you send us things you're grappling with, sources you're reading, and, well, we dive in.
We extract the key insights, basically trying to get you up to speed quickly.
Exactly. Think of it as your shortcut to getting really informed without, drowning in information.
And today we're tackling something pretty deep,
Hmm.
inner quietude. We got a YouTube transcript from one of you, from Rabbi Itamar Schwartz.
Right. And our mission for this dive is to really explore his ideas about moving from let's say, the busy external world we all live in to a more internal space, a richer inner world, as he puts it.
So if you're what we call the learner, someone who really wants to grasp things, get the core ideas fast, maybe for work, maybe just out of curiosity.
Then you're definitely in the right place. We're aiming for those aha
Yeah.
moments. Yeah. Not just a data dump.
Definitely. Okay, so Rabbi Schwartz starts with this fundamental idea, two worlds.
Two worlds. Okay, tell us about that.
Yeah, he talks about the external world, the one we see, touch, interact with every day, visible.
Sure. The obvious one.
And then there's the internal world, hidden, less obvious, but he argues potentially much more valuable to focus on.
Okay, so we're usually stuck on the outside track. How do we even start to shift focus inwards? He has an analogy, I think.
He does, yeah. It's quite a good one. He compares it to crossing a river.
A river.
Yeah, imagine one bank is the external world, the other is the internal.
Okay.
And the big question then becomes, well, how do you get across? What's the power, the bridge, that lets you move from one side to the other?
And the source gives an answer to that.
It does. It points to Torah and mitzvot.
Teachings and practices, essentially. So they're the bridge. How does that work?
Well, Rabbi Schwartz explains it like this. Torah, the teachings, connects us more directly to the internal world.
Okay.
And mitzvot, the practices or commandments, connect us more to the external world, how we act in the world.
Ah, I see. So one anchors you inside, the other anchors you outside.
Exactly. And together they create this link, connecting the person internally and externally.
Makes sense. But it's not just about, mechanically doing these things, is it? There's something else needed first.
That's a crucial point, yes.
Yeah.
He stresses that really entering the internal world, it requires quieting the external first.
Quieting the external. How?
He uses this really powerful example. The giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai.
Okay.
The sages describe it as a moment where everything, the entire creation, went silent, utterly still. Even the animals, the birds, everything.
Wow. The whole world held its breath, basically.
Pretty much. And the point is, that silence, that stillness, wasn't just, incidental. It was necessary, a prerequisite for the divine to be heard, for that internal connection.
So without that quiet, what happens if you just jump into study or practice without that initial stillness?
Well, the source suggests it can lead to a kind of muddling, a
Yeah.
mixing. The external and internal get tangled up. You don't get that clear focus needed for deep inner work. It's like trying to have a really quiet, important conversation in the middle of a loud party.
You just can't hear properly.
Right.
So this stillness, it's like a mediating force.
Yes, exactly. He introduces the Hebrew term Hashkata.
Hashkata.
Stillness, quietude. It's presented as this essential power, drawing on that Sinai example, that helps us navigate between the external and the internal. It's the go-between.
Interesting. Hashkata, it sounds like it's more than just not talking.
Oh, definitely. And Rabbi Abraham ben Harambam, Maimonides' son, apparently dives deeper into this.
Right, in his work, Hamaspic.
Yes, exactly. In the final chapter, he apparently explains that to really enter the internal world, you need a kind of nullification of the external.
Nullification, that sounds quite strong.
It does, like a cessation, a stopping of the constant input from the outside. He gives some practical examples, too.
Like the one about light and darkness that caught my eye.
Yeah, that's a key one. The idea is when we're in the light, physically, our senses are constantly engaged.
Right, seeing things, tables, chairs, maybe things that spark desires.
Exactly. It keeps activating that external connection, keeps us focused outward.
So light keeps us tethered to the outside. What about darkness, then? How does that help us go inward?
So Rabbi Abraham ben Harambam suggests that actually sitting in darkness is a fundamental technique.
Just sitting in the dark.
Yeah. By removing that external light, you cut down massively on the sensory input. It allows your internal awareness, your inner light, to become more noticeable.
That's fascinating because, a lot of people are scared of the dark or find it uncomfortable.
He addresses that. Rabbi Schwartz acknowledges that fear, in kids and even adults, maybe it feels like losing your bearings, losing yourself when the external cues vanish.
Yeah.
But he points out something crucial, the internal world itself. It doesn't operate on light and dark like our eyes do. Our inner experience isn't dependent on the light switch.
So inside, it's different. He mentions an inner lamp.
Two, actually. He talks about the intellect as an inner lamp, a mokul ner, and the soul itself is a divine lamp, neuroloki neshamato. External light helps us navigate the external world, read a book, see where we're going. But for the inner world, it's not essential. In fact, he suggests too much external light can actually reinforce those external ties.
Huh. So darkness helps break those ties, potentially. But what if you're scared of the dark? Is this method just off the table?
Well, the source suggests if there's a real fear, maybe this specific practice isn't the starting point. Maybe other work is needed first.
Okay.
But for those who aren't afraid, darkness becomes a powerful tool for achieving that hashkata, that stillness. He compared it to sleep, actually.
How so?
Most of us need darkness to sleep,
Right.
to quiet the body, quiet the mind.
Yeah, definitely. Hard to sleep with the lights blazing.
So in the same way physical stillness and darkness help the body rest, this intentional stillness helps the external part of us become quiet. It creates the space to, step into the internal world.
But you could just fall asleep, right?
Yeah, that's a caution he gives. If you're too focused just on the physical body relaxing, you might just drift off. That's not the goal here.
Right. So it's not just about darkness. It's about actively detaching.
Yes, weakening the strong connections we have to, say, physical comforts, desires, worries about the world. Those things really anchor us externally.
It creates strong ties.
Very strong.
Yeah.
And they can hinder really deep inner work. As those desires lessen their grip, the source says the soul itself becomes calmer.
So darkness is a tool, as Rabbi Abraham said, to help achieve this stillness, this detachment.
Precisely.
But I can easily imagine someone, really busy, very externally focused, thinking, sitting in the dark doing nothing. What a waste of time.
That's a really key point, and the source anticipates it. From a purely external perspective, stillness can look like emptiness, like unproductivity.
Yeah.
But for inner work, it's presented as incredibly valuable, essential even. And while, not all ages maybe use these exact techniques, the underlying principle of stillness, of Hashkata, is seen as valid.
Okay. And it's not just one level of stillness, is it? There are layers.
Exactly. It's a process. The first layer is dealing with the immediate external stuff. Noise, visual clutter.
Practical things.
Right. Close the window, turn off the phone, dim the lights, or, as discussed, embrace darkness. That's step one for sight. Silence for hearing.
Cutting off the obvious distractions. But then the noise moves inside.
That's it. Once the outside quiets down, you start noticing the internal noise much more. The source talks about intentionally quieting all 5 external senses.
Sight, hearing, what else?
Speech, not talking. Smell, though, interestingly, it suggests maybe using a pleasant, calming smell if that helps quiet the mind, not distract it. And touch, finding a comfortable, still position.
Okay, so creating a whole sensory environment conducive to quiet. But even then, that inner chatter starts.
That's when you encounter what the source calls the internal senses and their noise. And the very first wave of that internal noise, often it's just resistance.
Resistance to being still.
Yeah. Even if you intellectually agree it's a good idea, your mind might start finding reasons not to do it. Even seemingly spiritual reasons like, oh, I should be studying now, or I need to be doing something productive.
Huh. Yeah, the mind is clever at finding justifications. So how do you tackle that resistance?
Deep inner agreement is key, the source says. Really convincing yourself, not just intellectually but emotionally, that setting aside time for this is necessary, like time for eating or sleeping.
It's a need, not a luxury.
Exactly. And he mentions historical examples, respected figures like the Rosh Yeshiva of Radin, the Ponevezh Yeshiva, people who valued practices like this. It's not some weird fringe thing.
That helps, knowing it has roots. But the resistance can still feel strong if it's unfamiliar, if you don't see people around you doing it.
True. It can feel foreign. That inner agreement, that conviction, it takes time to really sink in, to penetrate the heart, as the source puts it. You have to keep reminding yourself it's a need of the soul. It aligns with tradition.
So it's a process, like deciding to eat healthier. You know it's good, but it takes time for it to feel natural and for the resistance to fade as you feel the benefits.
That's a great analogy, exactly like that. Intellectual understanding first, then emotional internalization. It takes repetition, reflection.
Okay, so we quiet the outside, work on the initial resistance. What's next? The source mentioned that the noise of the heart, emotions.
Yeah, less. Once the external distractions and the initial don't want to feeling fade a bit, underlying emotions tend to surface.
Like what?
Could be anything. Lingering anxieties, old frustrations, fears, sadness. Things you might have pushed down or thought were resolved. The Source describes it as the soul itself bringing these things up for attention.
Oof. That sounds like it could be uncomfortable, maybe even overwhelming.
It can be, yeah. But the crucial first step, according to the Source, isn't to fight them or deny them. It's just awareness.
Just notice them.
Notice them. Allow them to surface without judgment. There's a difference between reacting forcefully, getting swept away, and addressing them from a place of calm. Stillness helps make the emotional movements less violent, maybe, more observable.
Okay, so observe, acknowledge, but how do you stop them from just taking over the whole session?
Practice. The Source suggests a kind of gentle technique. Notice the emotion. There's that worry again. Acknowledge it briefly, and then consciously, gently try to set it aside and return your focus to the stillness.
Easier said than done, I imagine.
For sure. It takes practice. Some days it works better than others.
Yeah.
But gradually, the idea is you gain a bit more, let's say, regulation. You're less reactive.
Developing that emotional muscle. Is there anything else like actively replacing the negative?
Yes, that's suggested as a technique, too. After you've acknowledged and sort of set aside a negative feeling, you can consciously bring to mind a positive one.
Like a happy memory.
Could be. Or just a feeling of peace, gratitude, whatever works for you. It's not meant as a direct fight, like positive smashes negative. It's more about shifting the inner atmosphere back towards calm. Build a little toolbox of positive feelings you can access.
A toolbox. I like that. Are there other tools mentioned? External things?
Yeah, briefly. Things like calming music. If it genuinely calms you and doesn't become another distraction, maybe even consuming something light and soothing again, not for indulgence, but for its calming effect.
And posture.
Definitely. Finding a posture that's comfortable and supports stillness, but isn't so comfy you immediately fall asleep. It's individual.
Right. An environment. Does the room matter?
It can for some people.
Yeah.
A pleasant, uncluttered space might help foster inner peace. Others might be less affected. The key is just creating conditions conducive to your stillness within your means.
Okay. So the goal with emotions and stillness is to reach a point where they're either quiet or they don't disturb your inner peace so much.
Pretty much. Minimizing the noise of the heart. And then, of course, there's the other big one, thoughts.
Ah, yes. The noise of the intellect, the endless stream.
Exactly. The Source distinguishes a bit here. There's the everyday chatter, worries, plans, fantasies.
My mental shopping list.
Right. And then there's the intense mental activity of, say, a scholar, deep in complex study. That's also thought, but different. For most people starting this, the challenge is the first kind, the everyday mind wandering.
So how do we quiet that? Is it the same as with emotions?
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
Become aware of the thought train. Gently try to let the thoughts go, just watch them pass without grabbing onto them. Easier for fleeting thoughts.
And for the stickier ones, the worries that keep coming back.
Same principle. Awareness, attempt to quiet or disengage. But you might also use that redirection technique again. Gently shift your focus to something calming.
Like?
The Source suggests a calming image, real or imagined. Maybe a peaceful nature scene, a still lake, a forest. Preferably visualized in darkness, it seems to suggest, to maintain that inward focus.
So notice the thought. Gently redirect to the calm image. Repeat as needed.
Exactly. It's a gradual quieting, not flipping a switch. Acknowledge, redirect, return to stillness.
Yeah.
Over and over.
And try not to fall asleep while visualizing the peaceful lake.
Right. That caution comes up again. Conscious stillness is the aim.
Okay, so we've talked about quieting action like speech, quieting emotions, the heart, quieting thoughts, the intellect. What happens when these garments, as the Source calls them, get quieter?
That's when you start to touch the essence. The Source describes these three: action, emotion, thought as garments of the soul.
Garments, like clothing.
Yeah, things that cover or express the soul. Even positive things like Torah study and mitzvot are considered garments. They are how the soul interacts with the world or connects with the divine.
Okay.
Now, if those activities, study, practice, good deeds are done lishma, purely for the sake of heaven, with pure intention,
Right, you mentioned that.
then those garments become, like, transparent. They reveal the inner light of the soul shining through them. But if they're done with mixed motives, or if we're just caught up in the noise of emotion and thought, the garments are thick, heavy. They obscure the soul.
So pure intention is like a shortcut to revealing the soul.
It definitely helps. It makes the garments clear. But the practice of stillness works from the other direction. It deliberately quiets the garments themselves.
Making them thinner, quieter.
Exactly, leading to this gradual process. The Source calls it the soul's exile from its coverings, and then its revelation. It emerges as the noise recedes.
And this emergence, this revelation, is that where the true self comes in, the Ani?
That's the idea. You discover the Ani, the I that's deeper than the everyday ego, deeper than the roles you play or the thoughts you have. It's described as a profound personal discovery, like being truly born into yourself. The Source quotes a verse, "I have begotten you today."
Wow, that sounds incredibly profound. And from that perspective, from that deep I, the outside world starts to look different.
Radically different, potentially. The Source introduces this really startling idea. From that deep inner awareness, the entire external world can start to feel like imagination or a dream,
The world is imagination. How?
compared to the solid reality of that inner self. He uses an analogy of kids playing make-believe. They get totally absorbed in their game. It feels real to them. Maybe our absorption in the external world is a bit like that, a constructed reality.
That's a lot to take in. So if the world feels like a dream, does that change how you relate to it?
It seems so. It can lead to a kind of detachment, maybe. Not indifference, but less gripping. Less being tossed around by external events and concerns. You might feel a bit solitary, actually, because your inner reality feels so different from how most people seem to operate.
I can see that. Like you're seeing behind the curtain.
Something like that.
Yeah.
He gives an example, how an older person might view a wedding differently than a young person. They see the excitement, but also the bigger picture, the transient nature of it all, perhaps focusing more on the underlying connection being formed.
A shift in perspective based on deeper understanding. So going inward helps you build your own unique inner reality.
Yes, you develop your own inner space, your unique sense of self that isn't defined by comparing yourself to others. This inner world is your true portion.
And if you feel you have your own complete portion, maybe you stop wanting what others have.
Exactly. The Source says it fosters freedom from envy. Why would you want to trade your unique reality for someone else's? And things that used to feel like flaws or deficiencies,
Yeah.
they start to look different too. Not as mistakes, but as your specific field to work in.
Yeah.
Your unique challenges are actually your path.
Okay, so it's embracing your own unique setup, challenges and all, and this leads to unity. That seems counterintuitive. You're becoming more individual.
But as unity within yourself and then a deeper connection to the whole. The Source uses an analogy of dough, like flour, water, yeast, separate ingredients. But when they come together, they become one thing, dough. Seeing your different inner aspects, intellect, emotion, soul, not as separate warring factions, but as parts of a unified whole. That's a perspective gained from going deeper.
I see. Integrating the different parts of yourself.
Right. And living from that place means you understand your own inner landscape, you see where you are, and you can consciously work on the next step of your growth instead of just reacting to external stuff.
Because each soul's journey is unique.
Completely unique, a unique creation, a unique path. The deepest level, the Source suggests, is really living within that unique internal reality, connected to yourself at the root.
And connecting to others from that place.
It's apparently far more profound, far more real than connections based on superficial similarities or external roles.
So it's a whole journey, from the noisy outside, quieting the senses, dealing with resistance, emotions, thoughts, unveiling the soul, discovering the true I, and finding this deep, unified inner reality.
That's the path outlined, yeah. A journey inward to self-discovery and a different way of being in the world.
Well, this has certainly been a deep dive. Exploring this idea of inner quietude, Hashkata, it really does bring up some profound questions, doesn't it, about our relationship with ourselves, with the world.
It absolutely does. And we hope for you listening that this gives you some things to reflect on, how these ideas might resonate with your own search for knowledge or understanding.
Yeah, this feels like just scratching the surface, really. There are clearly many more layers to understanding this inner world.
Definitely.
We'd genuinely love to hear what you think. Did this spark any questions, any insights of your own? Let us know. Maybe we can explore some of those threads in future dives.
And please do. And maybe leave you with this thought to ponder. If you were to consciously, intentionally cultivate even a little more inner stillness in your life, how might that shift how you see your everyday world? How might it change your understanding of your own potential?
Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.